And gentlemen, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching India Tonight with me, Sumita Karir, and my colleague Nivedna Prabhu from our Delhi studios. And tonight, the big focus is on the US government shutdown. Well, in a stark reminder of Washington's deep partisan divide, the US federal government has officially shut down at midnight. And this marks the first such closure in nearly 7 years. In fact, lawmakers failed to pass a short-term funding bill, and that's left hundreds of thousands of federal workers furloughed without pay and halting non-essential services nationwide. In fact, Nivedna, the impact is being felt across the country. In fact, this is, like I stated, this is the first such shutdown since 2018-2019.
Absolutely, Sumita. In fact, let's also tell our viewers that the impasse stems from clashing demands over spending priorities, with President Trump threatening mass layoffs to streamline operations amid the Democratic pushback. Now, the impacts are already rippling. National parks closing, economic data release is paused, and veteran services disrupted. Negotiations resume, but resolution, beg your pardon, clearly remains uncertain. In fact, both Sumita and I will be decoding that further with our guest tonight. In fact, joining us on the show is Alistair Newton, CEO, Alvan Business Advisory Limited, and also who will be joining us on the show is Raymond Vickery, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, Trade Development, in a bit, Sumita.
Absolutely, Nivedna. And thank you very much, Mr. Vickery, for taking the time out and speaking to us here on ET Now. We'll, of course, be joined in by the second guest as well. All right. I'm told that we're joined by Alistair Newton. In a short while from now, we'll be joined by Mr. Vickery as well. So, Mr. Newton, thank you very much for taking the time out. So close to 800,000 federal employees are expected to get furloughed. Services are getting shut, and of course, paychecks are halted. What happens now, and for how long would this shutdown remain, given the fact that the last time that this shutdown happened, it remained for at least 30 to 35 days?
Well, I think we could see this one go on for a good deal longer, because what the Democrats are effectively attacking is part of Donald Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, his flagship bill, and he is not going to be in a hurry to surrender anything on that. And what they're after, of course, is health-related benefits. And whilst there probably is a good deal of support for what the Democrats want to see reinstated, it's not at all clear that the majority of Americans want to see the government shut down as a way of trying to get Trump to change his mind. And I think, honestly, the Democrats have picked the wrong fight on the wrong terms on this. In this case, Americans want to see Congress doing its job patently. At the moment, it isn't, because it's busy arguing about budget. It doesn't want to see federal workers furloughed without pay, and certainly those workers don't want to be furloughed without pay. And the essential employees who are still working and are not getting paid are probably even less happy. If Donald Trump follows through on his threat of mass layoffs, it will play well with his base, who want to see government shrink. But it won't play well with a lot of ordinary workers, obviously, because they're going to lose their jobs. Those people are potential Democrat voters. Those are the votes which are likely to be lost in the midterms. Furthermore, by going after healthcare benefits, the Democrats are surrendering now, or using now, what could have been one of their most potent weapons come the midterms in whatever it is, 13 months' time. So I don't think this is a particularly smart move by the Democrats. I do think Chuck Schumer in particular was badly bruised by surrendering on budget earlier this year. I think he's now gone too far in the other direction with the pendulum. And I actually think, I seldom say this, I actually agree with Newt Gingrich, who said in an interview in the New York Times a few days ago that he doesn't actually think that the Democrats have got the backbone to win through on this fight. So especially given that Donald Trump is a much better communicator than the Democrat Party leaders, I think that the only way we're going to see this end quickly is if the Democrats decide to throw in the towel.
All right, so that remains to be seen if that's going to happen, Mr. Newton. But let me ask you this: in your opinion, what are the immediate political consequences of this shutdown?
Yes, Mr. Vikri, if you could please unmute yourself and, yes, respond to the question about the political ramifications and implications.
Sorry, we got frozen there. The network collapsed on us. I don't think there are any short-term implications. I do think there are longer-term implications, i.e. the midterms, as I said. I'm also skeptical about market implications. I know we saw gold rallying still further earlier this week in anticipation of a shutdown. But by and large, investors tend to ride out government shutdowns without any particularly violent reactions. So I'm not expecting to see any major market reaction in the short term. I'm not expecting to see any major political reaction in the short term, other than more of the same. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, who has been very outspoken on this already, and Republican Party leaders generally, fingering the Democrats for the shutdown, blaming them entirely. And I think that because of their superior communication skills, they're going to outgun the Democrats, whose approval ratings are already terrible. Let's face it. Everybody keeps looking at Donald Trump's approval ratings and saying, oh, you know, the president's approval ratings are not very good. Actually, overall, they're not that bad. And he's certainly not lost any support among Republican voters over the course of the first 8 months or whatever it is he's been in office. Democrat approval ratings are shocking. This is not going to help them.
Right, Mr. Newton, as you pointed out, we're given to understand. We'll, of course, come back to that particular point that you've made, but Mr. Vikri also joins us, in fact, on the show. Mr. Vikri, great to have you once again on the show. Let's begin with how you're essentially decoding this from your vantage point.
Well, thanks very much for having me. It seems to me that the immediate question, of course, issue is having to do with Medicaid expansion and the Affordable Care Act. So medical services have become a very key political issue. And even though the Trump administration had talked about doing away with the Affordable Care Act, when it came right down to it, they didn't have any plan and they weren't going to do it. So this is the immediate issue. The larger issue, of course, is one of the constitutional form of government. The Trump administration and President Trump himself has taken every opportunity to expand executive power regardless of the constitutional checks and balances which have held the country together for 250 years. So that's the larger question, and the political side of that is what happens at the midterms. The last time this came up during the Trump administration, Leader Schumer, Minority Leader Schumer, and the Democrats folded immediately. And the political reaction, particularly from their base, was very hostile and very bad. This time they're holding tight, and there is a shutdown. How long that will last and who gets the blame for it is the big political question. But the larger issue is what happens at the midterms to be able to restore a constitutional form of government in the United States. As you may have seen yesterday, there was an address by the president saying that he was going to use troops in the major cities to take over policing. This is really unprecedented in the United States to do this, absent some sort of widespread uprising. So that's the larger question, and it's going to be a political issue in the midterms.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is a political issue, and that's what I was coming to next, Mr. Vikri. But how would this impasse now be broken, given the fact that this move could very well be a body blow to lakhs of Americans on top of Trump's policies? And of course, you know, we've seen the job growth numbers haven't been quite encouraging. Inflation, as it is, continues to rise. What can the Republicans now do to get Democrats to vote?
Well, I don't think there is much room for compromise here. I believe that the Republicans really want to use this as a further tool to try to dismantle the federal government. President Trump has talked about firing hundreds of thousands of people. unless there is some sort of immediate political uprising, really. I mean, there's a No King's Day demonstration, which is set for October the 18th. That kind of widespread activity could have an impact. The more likely scenario is that the Democrats will have made their point and will have impressed upon the electorate the seriousness of the situation, and then that they will back down and go forward looking to the midterm. So I think that that's probably the way it'll be resolved. In the meantime, there are millions of people in the United States who are going to be adversely impacted by this. There is one shutdown, which is particularly important, which is economic data. The Fed is not going to be able to have the economic data that it uses usually to make decisions, and that kind of impact is going to be spread across the government. But again, the question is, who's going to get the blame for it? The Democrats last time backed down and really were blamed, particularly by their base, for not standing up. This time they're standing up. The question is, will the populace at large blame them or the Republicans? I think there's a substantial chance that this is a different kind of shutdown, and that there will be blame assessed to President Trump and his administration. But he definitely doesn't see it that way and wants to use it as an opportunity to further erode checks and balances and rule of law in the United States.
A fair point over there. And taking that particular point to Mr. Newton, who is actually seen as accountable, Mr. Newton, for the disruption among, what we're looking at essentially for Americans at the moment?
Well, I think it depends what your political leanings happen to be to a large extent. Let me say, first of all, that I agree with everything that Raymond has just said. But I want to point a particular finger at one man in the US, and that is Russ Vought, who is the head of the Office of Management and Budget. He's former Heritage Foundation, and I do think that he is essentially behind a scheme here to try to do exactly what Raymond has said, which is to try to winnow down the government, which of course will be very popular with Trump supporters. I don't think that whatever Donald Trump does is going to have a negative impact on the MAGA base. We've seen him do all sorts of things which are really a stretch compared to what the traditional definition of America First is. And he gets away with it. He's not referred to as Teflon Don for nothing. So I don't think you're going to see any diminution in support for the president over this shutdown. As I said earlier, I do think there is a risk that the Democrats may in fact suffer. I do definitely agree with Raymond that this is likely to have an impact on the midterms. As I said earlier, the Democrats were lining up to make healthcare benefits a key issue in the midterms. They've decided to fire that shot early. I think they're already struggling in the midterms in any case. The Senate is actually weighted against them, all other things being equal, if you look at the seats which are up for grabs. Right. And the House is probably going to be a lot closer than anybody thinks at this stage.
Right, Mr. Newton, we did see what transpired after 2018-2019 stand-up. We'll have to see if the outcome remains the same in these upcoming mid-polls. But let me also take you, back to what Donald Trump has said. He's essentially said that he would use this to fire hundreds of thousands of federal workers. But then he's always been an advocate of firing workers anyway, and we have seen that layoff exercise happen. And now he's essentially once again threatening to cut benefits for people. But does that stand legally? Does that hold water when it comes to the kind of legal challenges that he might face?
Well, which way do you think the Supreme Court is going to jump based on what we've seen of it so far? The Supreme Court now seems to have a majority which is leaning quite firmly, not totally, towards unitary executive theory, which is exactly what we are talking about here. A formerly obscure legal theory, which has come very much to the fore during the first few months of the Trump administration, and I think is likely to do even more so going forward. It is pretty ironic that America is going to be 250 years old in 2026, a cause for considerable celebration, and it does seem to be moving rather back in the direction of having a de facto king.
Right. In fact, Mr. Newton, as you pointed out, and given what we're looking at as to how this is being essentially seen in terms of criticism as well, Mr. Vickery, I want to take that point to you because Trump has called this a Democrat disaster. Well, of course, critics say he engineered the crisis himself, but I want to understand from you, how does the messaging play out among his voter base when we're looking at what has been unfolding?
Well, among his voter base, he said it several years ago that he could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue, New York, and not be held responsible by his voter base. And that is the premise upon which he goes forward, doing things which are obviously unconstitutional and illegal, and then resorting to this unitary theory that he has the right to do it. On October the 18th, there will be another demonstration in the United States called No King's Day. And there has been a widespread movement to turn out people on that basis of no kings. But whether or not that's going to have any kind of immediate impact with the courts, it seems to be that the lower courts, the district courts and the appellate courts, are standing up. But when it comes to the Supreme Court, as Mr. Newton has pointed out, the majority there in favor of the president seems to be holding. Now, whether or not my old partner John Roberts will stand up this time around, as he did in regard to Obamacare, is yet to be seen. But make no mistake about it, this is a very, very difficult time in the United States. And it's a time for other great democracies, such as India and such as in Western Europe,
Right.
to step up and try to fill some of the vacuum in terms of democratic leadership, which is necessary to preserve freedom and prosperity throughout the world.
Right. Absolutely. Mr. Vickery, this is going to have ramifications not just for the United States, but perhaps for the rest of the world as well. And let me take the point across to Mr. Newton. Mr. Newton, we've been having these conversations over the India-US trade deal. We're given to understand that, of course, the Union Commerce Minister was in the United States just last week. What happens to trade negotiations now, given that the United States government is facing a shutdown? Does that further prolong these trade negotiations now?
Hard to say at this stage, simply because I don't think actually that India was close to getting a deal with the United States, even before this shutdown. I think there's a lot of issues out there. In the end, as you know, as you've seen in practice, it doesn't matter what the trade negotiators say. The final decision will be made by Donald Trump himself. He's been all over the place on Russia, which of course is one of his points of contention with India. Let me put it that way. He has no grasp whatsoever, as far as I can tell, or concern about India's very strong historical ties with Russia and the need for affordable energy to fuel India's economy. You'll get no sympathy from Donald Trump on that at all. He seems to have other gripes against India as well. The H-1B visa business is shocking and clearly aimed in significant part at India to try and squeeze more concessions out of the Indian government. You know, you may recall, Samita, that in an interview we did a few weeks ago, one of the other panelists at that time said, the Indian government is not in the business of capitulating in the face of US pressure. And the US is going to keep squeezing you irrespective of whether there's a government shutdown or not. So I don't think this is going to make a lot of difference to the trade deal, because I don't think a trade deal is imminent.
Right, Mr. Newton. In fact, as you pointed out, Mr. Vikri, I want to take the same question to you as well, given what my colleague Sumita was also pointing out, and of course about the trade essentially and how this would be in the larger scheme of things.
Well, I think first of all, you have to drop back and look at the psyche of the president, of President Trump. What he looks at this India relationship is not as a relationship which we've tried to build up over the last 30 years, but as a transaction in which there's a winner and a loser. And he's going to be the winner. And he's going to show that he's a great man by having capitulation and, according to his standards, coming out on top. He has no appreciation for the need of the world's two greatest, largest democracies to work together to be able to solve problems of peace and prosperity in the world. So a government shutdown is irrelevant to him in terms of the way he looks at the world. What he's trying to do is to show that he has his triumph. And really, India is only a very subsidiary consideration in that. What he wants to show is that he can get the Nobel Peace Prize by having resolved the crisis in Ukraine or Gaza. He's already claimed falsely that he has solved 7 international wars. So that's his mindset. And so for analysts to look at this in a logical and traditional way is completely out the window. In fact,
all right. It seems we've lost that line with Mr. Vikri. Let me come to you, Mr. Newton. Mr. Newton, we were, of course, talking about how, the negotiations with India as far as a trade deal with the United States is concerned, that could perhaps, get delayed a bit, even though both sides have expressed the need to sort of fast track these conversations. But let me ask you one final question before we wrap up this discussion. Given the Democrats have now given out the message that they're fighting for Americans, they're fighting for the common Americans, they cannot afford right now to walk away with nothing. So where do you see this headed, and what are Democrats going to do next?
I wish I could give you an answer to that. As I think both Raymond and I have remarked, the Democrats are in a corner. It doesn't look like Donald Trump is about to throw in the towel come what may, for reasons we've discussed. Chuck Schumer is going to get hammered if he backs off at this stage, and he's probably going to get hammered if he stays in there. I think this is actually quite smart politics by Russ Vought and by Donald Trump. Even though, it looks foolish from our perspective. But I think from their perspective, they know what they're doing. They have a plan. They intend to follow through on it. I think if this shutdown is going to end anytime soon, as I said earlier, the Democrats are probably going to have to give in for exactly the reasons that Raymond just said over the India-US trade negotiations, or indeed any trade negotiations. Donald Trump, in any situation like this, it's a transactional affair where he is determined that he is going to be seen as the winner in a world which is very zero-sum from his perspective.
Right, Mr. Newton. In fact, it's a fair point that you make, as well as Mr. Vikri. But for the moment, we leave the conversation at that. Both Sumita and I thank the both of you for taking the time out and joining us here this evening.